Hey, everybody, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. And if you're new to the channel, welcome to you too. We're glad to have you. Without too much further ado, I'm going to dive into today's topic: how past relationships affect us. And through this video, I'm going to try and hit a bit on the good and the bad of just of what we take forward with us and how it affects us and how we can try to mitigate a lot of the damage that comes from it so that we have a better perspective as we move forward, because that is actually a lot of what we determine when we move forward is whether or not it's going to be an emotional knee-jerk reaction or something that we gain a bit of reason, logic, and real perspective from, so that our emotions aren't what's ruling us in our dealings with our future relationships, but really our ability to think clearly on it and genuinely identify what the problem was, whether it was us or somebody else. So to dive right into this, I got some inspiration for this video from a number of different places. One of which was a podcast where a woman was talking about how her past relationships were affecting her future ones. This person had a situation where a guy she had gotten involved with, a baby daddy of her kids, not very responsible, pretty much not a good person to have children with, but she had gotten involved with him when she was young, and then her future relationships, she was attempting to get guys that were coming into the picture to be people that were paying the bills right out the gate for her and her children that she's had with another guy. And she's literally using that as the opener. That's the first thing she wants to have happen. Part of the reason why is because obviously the fear of getting involved with somebody who doesn't have the financial wherewithal to take care of a family, but also not realizing that she's taking that and projecting it onto anybody in the future, and in effect creating a situation where the guys that she's going to bring in with that, or attempt to shape and shift and manipulate, she's going to turn them into simps. She's going to turn them into guys that ultimately she's not going to be attracted to, because it creates a dichotomy between who who she's willing to allow to come in and sleep with her versus guys that she is going to attempt to use. She ends up having sort of that stripper mindset of, you can take the stripper out of the club, but you can't take the club out of the stripper, where they view every relationship as, how can I either use you, or are you somebody that I just don't demonstrate any self-control with? I sleep with you because I'm attracted to you. And now you've got these two different categories that you're basically living in all the time, where that's your setup. And unfortunately, the damage from the very first relationship has started to cause that schism and help to kind of drive that point home. So she's never going to respect anybody that comes in and accepts such a ridiculous situation. At the same time, she's trying to impose such an overreaching expectation on it because she thinks she's protecting herself. And part of that is just a lack of self-reflection. And we all need that to go forward in our relationships, so we don't end up in a point where we have ridiculous expectations of people coming into our lives. You have to have something where you really genuinely take a look at everything, and that is why you have to get to a point where your emotions aren't ruling everything, and your logic and your reason and your clear thinking about a situation is what's dominating. Because that hurt, that damage, that pain can be a real impediment to everything you do moving forward. It really, really can. And speaking of, sort of the ridiculous expectations, uh, we as men, we end up with knee-jerk reactions to situations because we're aware of the culture. We're aware that at this point the promiscuity and the hedonism are absolutely being promoted, especially for women to engage in when it comes to relationships. They're being encouraged to break their word and be dishonest. And I'm not accusing any women of this as I say this. I'm just simply saying this is the way that our culture is now shifting with everything. It's encouraging this sort of thing. So since we know that it's encouraging this, we know that that's what's going on. Moving forward from this point, there are men that have actually been burned by this situation, and then they switch into gears where they decide, okay, now I'm just going to go run around randomly hooking up with women. The inevitable fact is you're going to run into at certain points women that might not be quite that damaged. You have no real assessment of it. You can't know, but it's extremely likely from just a statistical standpoint, you're going to run into women that aren't per se that damaged and decide, I'm going to hit it and quit it. And then you're going to be doing more damage. You're going to be basically adding to the problem all the way across the board. And a lot of guys like to pretend like, no, 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 no. I've tricked the system. I'm better than the system. I figured out how to slip through the cracks and do all that. And if you paid attention to one of my other recent videos where we talk about false allegations, false accusations, you're pretty much, if you're going around having hookups like that, you're sticking your head right in the noose. You have no idea who's going to turn around on the back end and claim that something wasn't consensual when during the whole time that it was happening, it clearly was, but they're going to claim that it wasn't. They're going to claim that you did something that you didn't do. Going around sticking your head in the noose with hookups like that is just inviting yourself all sorts of trouble in your life. You're just really, really messing with it in a way that there's no way it's going to work out well for you. Inevitably, you'll get your foot caught in that door. You just will. But in reference to this video, we're talking about it's extremely likely you're going to run into a situation where somebody that you do that damage to, where maybe they were looking for something serious, you're just going to pile the damage on. And we can't live in denial of the fact that even us as men, if we don't have self control, we're adding to the damage. You can't sit there and justify and say, well, if I watch Only Fools or I watch adult content, I'm completely separating myself and not adding to the damage. You are funding and supporting all of that by every time you do that. And Red Pill is about having self control, not just demanding that of women, but expecting it of ourselves. Let's be real. And we've all failed, we've all fallen short in many different ways. But if we're going to be real about it, we can't have harsh and strong and solid moral expectations of women if men don't exemplify that as well. And I think one of my final points when I'm talking about our past relationships and how they affect us, not just the things like we could do, like Only Fools or adult content, and I'm trying to be very careful how I say those things so I don't get flagged, uh, that our past relationships kind of tend to push us into, because you end up in those situations because you're coping. You feel like what you have isn't enough for whatever reason. You're attempting to cope, and that's usually been affected by a past relationship or in a lot of ways how you view things because of your relationships. It shifts us into a place where we're attempting to cope like that. And my final point is really about the treatment of others in the future when it comes to how our relationships have damaged us. And one major thing is if you've been around a lot of people that, for say, I'm going to use this as an example. If you've been around a lot of people that were cheating, committing adultery all over the place, sleeping around with married people or just sleeping around generally in relationships, you tend to start to view everybody as if everybody's running around doing that. And my point with this is that although that is rampant in our culture and hookup culture is rampant in our culture right now, I have seen this happen many different times, even with myself. There's been people that I've dated in the past that come to find out they've either been around people like that or they themselves had some history with that where they did a lot of hooking up and did a lot of connecting with it. They're not a part of my life anymore now. Obviously, there's a disqualification there where I'm not stupid enough to risk my future on that. But they go through all of that and they project that onto you. Sometimes unrealizing it all as they're doing it that, okay, I think this about him because I thought this about other people in the past because they were legitimately doing it. So they couldn't understand that many of you know I do independent film work. So I've spent time around women that did modeling, jump back and forth between modeling and acting. And throughout the whole course of all of that, a lot of them are would be considered by most people to be pretty attractive. So they come in and they see all of this, and it's easy to automatically assume, well, you must be sleeping with these people because everybody I know runs around sleeping with everybody, not realizing that throughout the creativity of all the filmmaking stuff, throughout all the stuff that I'm doing that I keep busy with in life, that I really haven't set myself up to kind of get my kicks or my jollies by trying to find out how many people I can string along or how many plates I can spin, because that's just not how I spend my time. I really only have time for one relationship, and I don't have it as a hobby or as something that I do to try to have multiple people lined up at once. First of all, I don't want to get hit with any false accusations. You're setting yourself up for that. Second of all, you're contributing to the damage, as I mentioned before earlier in this video. So, but they don't understand that. It's like it's a completely foreign concept. They've been conditioned by having lived under that for so long that they think that everybody does that. And they can't fathom that, in fact, everybody does not do that. Some people have ways of healthily pursuing creative exploits, everything from exercise to music to film to, I'm just naming off stuff coming off to the top of my head here, but I'm sure a lot of you have different things, everything from photography to hiking to nature to all sorts of things that you could get involved with that have nothing to do with just running around rampantly, sleeping around and screwing people over. But they can't really fathom it because they've been in it so long that they tend to project that onto those people. And another unfortunate thing about that is that people that have been heavily involved in cheating, adultery, and other things in the past, it affects their mindset too. And there can be the very real danger of, if they've done that a lot in the past, they might project that onto you because they themselves might still be involved in it or still doing it. So they can't fathom somebody not behaving that way simply because they have, or they might even still be doing it, which is a very real danger. And you'll know when it's happening because you'll realize, look, I'm not showing you any signs of it. There's nothing sneaky happening. I don't have any missing blocks of time. And I'm clearly not really crossing any lines that anybody would reasonably think that, but you're thinking that anyway. Red flag right there that either A, they've experienced that with a lot of people, which, maybe they're trying to genuinely get out of it, maybe, just maybe, or B, they've done that a lot themselves in the past and they just by default assume that you're doing it. Hard to tell, really, really hard to tell. I mean, you can have very, very honest, straightforward conversations with people like that and still not get anywhere because you're trying to decipher everything. And sometimes that's a really bad situation. If you can't have enough of a straightforward conversation to really, really nail down the details of that stuff, it's probably not going to work out. So, anyway, that's just kind of my take on how a lot of our past relationships affect our future. What are your thoughts? Drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. I always get a kick out of reading some of your funny stories. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, it's a very sad story where you had to learn the hard way. But pretty much all of us have to some degree. I mean, we can't ever fault ourselves for that. And that's something that we have to remember moving forward. Just because something bad happens, even if you got fooled, even if you got tricked, it doesn't mean it has to happen again. And we can learn from that experience, grow from it, become more logical, more reasonable, and even understand ourselves better so we don't end up back in the same place. Because sometimes we have the benefit of being able to learn from the mistakes of other people rather than having to experience it. But sometimes you get hit with stuff that you don't see coming. You try to watch out and the other person might completely be a chameleon. I'm considering doing a video on just what to spot with people that are a chameleon in your life. They show up and they've gotten so used to tricking everybody and being a con that they are incredibly good at doing the whole chameleon spiel. They're just incredibly sneaky, and best ways to spot that. So I've had that suggested a few times in the comments, and we might just try to tackle that again soon. So with all that said, I'm going to leave it here, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will talk to you all again soon. Have a great day.